Hi, we're here with Environment and Special Places Minister Rebecca Schultz for a quick rundown of some of the things that she's been up to. You're just back from Japan, and there's lots of developments that are happening here in the world of energy and environment.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me today.
Thank you. Domo arigato.
I learned a little bit of Japanese, mostly just in the terms of greetings, but people sure appreciate when you try. So started our speeches with konnichiwa and arigato gozaimasu. So
Excellent.
yeah,
Yeah, somebody told me that once when you're traveling, two most important words to learn in any language: please and thank you.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So why don't you tell us about your trip to Japan and, knowing that there is no market for Alberta LNG, no
Gosh.
business case for LNG.
Well, I can tell you, I do think people in Japan see a business case, despite what our federal government has said over the last couple of years. It was a really productive couple of days. So, part of our mission was coordinated through Energy for a Secure Future. And so, they've been doing a lot of work to connect with Japan, folks in policy and in business, and help make the case for Canadian natural gas. And so, we had a number of meetings. We had a tour of an LNG offtake facility, and then there was one day, almost like a symposium style, full of panels and conversations about, first of all, what we have to offer in terms of Canadian energy, and address some of the concerns that Japan has had, especially given the last couple of years, and how they see us as a reliable trading partner. And a lot of that does. Really come down to having a federal government that has not supported market access, not supported pipelines. I know some had also raised the British Columbia government and their lack of willingness to push for market access and pipeline projects. So, for example, when we toured the LNG offtake facility, they're still not receiving Canadian natural gas. They had a tanker in from Mongolia that morning, and they said they're pretty excited actually to bring in Canadian natural gas with the completion of LNG Canada. But, they also have a very, I would say, a pretty lofty set of environmental goals. They're not an energy producer, but it really does matter to them that the energy that they are bringing in is responsibly produced so that they can also be part of the environmental solution globally by bringing in responsible energy and displacing less responsibly produced energy, not just in Japan, but throughout Southeast Asia.
Russia, China, the usual suspects, Middle East. Read that actually Japan is reliant on Iraq for a lot of oil.
Yeah, so they really do see us as a, potential trading partner. They understand the abundance of natural gas that we have. Of course, part of my message was, first of all, our premier has committed to doubling energy production, which means we will have that natural gas and that we are pushing for pipelines. I do think, there was a lot of conversation about tariffs and the impact that that has had. And I think a positive there is it's maybe shifted some of the narrative from provinces across the country that maybe had been opposed to energy provinces or projects, now saying, you know what, we actually need this for the overall Canadian economy. But now we actually have to turn that into action. We need to see those pipeline projects completed, which will allow us to then take our natural gas to other areas of the world. And so, a lot of our conversation was about our environmental record, the work that our industry has done on methane. We had a number of industry folks join us on that mission as well as Indigenous representation. So, Stephen Buffalo from the Indian Resource Council honestly just did such a fantastic job about talking about the importance of these projects, obviously, for First Nations communities
Mm.
and economic reconciliation.
Yeah.
We had Charlene Gale with the First Nations Projects Coalition so that she could really share the message about the work that they're doing to bring information, unbiased information to First Nations communities so that they are able to make decisions at the speed of business to keep these projects moving forward quickly. And of course, with Stephen's role in the AIOC, the Alberta Indigenous Opportunities Corporation, there was a huge amount of discussion there. And Karen Ogan, again with First Nations LNG Alliance, just bringing a message that First Nations communities across, especially BC and Alberta, but right across Canada, are seeing the benefits of these projects for their communities. And then, making the case for our environmental record and why we want to be one of their top trading partners.
Excellent. So you had mentioned tariffs and also the attitude of other governments, specifically British Columbia. Have you seen a shift in attitude? Just recently, in the last, we had Mr. Abbey on CBC with the premiers in Washington here yesterday, and there seemed to, I don't know, am I wrong? That there seems to be kind of more of a willingness?
Yeah, and again, I haven't spoken to the premier myself, but reading some of the comments and media stories about that, it looks like British Columbia is shifting. That was one of the jurisdictions that was raised to us by folks from Japan while we were over there, saying, what are you doing to work with British Columbia to encourage them to support pipeline projects? And so, I do think, I'm an optimist. So if there's a benefit from these tariff conversations and the overall broader conversation about the Canadian economy and the importance of energy, and our premier is doing such a great job of articulating that both in Canada and the United States. I think that this is a really important time for us to be having that conversation, but then we need to actually um, put that into action. So with things like Bill C-69, obviously that slows down any major projects that are going to be built in this country, obviously called the No More Pipelines Act.
Right.
We can't have regulations like that and then say, oh, but we're going to be pro energy and we need to export more of our natural gas. Same thing right now from the federal government. I mean, they're saying now, oh, sure, we need to support the energy industry, but they have not taken the emissions cap off the table. They have not taken the clean electricity regulations off the table. So they still have all of these very problematic pieces of policy, regulation, legislation on the table, creating uncertainty for investment in oil and gas, which then again to people outside of Canada, and this is what we heard in Japan, is that it does not tell the story that we are a stable, reliable trading partner. And so I think that that's an area where, I mean, I hope that we also see an election. I've been pretty vocal about that. We do need a pro energy, pro economy um, focused federal government. We really do. And so I think that that's going to happen. And I think that that will help. But that's what we need when it comes to our image outside of Canada to ensure those jobs, strong economy inside of Canada. And then again, like that is what's going to have an impact on, global emissions and Japan's environmental goals.
Sure. And I was going to ask you about that as well, because on March 9th, we are going to have a change of government regardless, right? Whether there's an election or not. So, what would you expect from, I guess, a liberal government or alternatively conservative government under Pierre Polyev?
I mean, I obviously do have concerns with this current federal liberal government, and I don't think that any of the candidates who are running for the future liberal leadership have really committed to changing course. They say that our economy matters and that we should look at marketing our energy like we haven't in the past. But again, we have Mark Carney, who, very much has supported that pro carbon tax, pro activist agenda, wanted to increase the carbon tax, quite frankly. And so we're not seeing anything from them that will essentially move our country in a different direction. So I firmly believe we need a federal conservative government. Um, you know, Obviously, we need to get rid of these barriers. Bill C-69, we need to move quickly on market access and building pipelines across our country. I would say multiple directions, and our premier has been a champion for that. But then, of course, we need to get rid of the emissions cap. We need to take that off the table. We can't have policies that are going to curtail production and essentially then curtail our ability to meet the demands of our major trading partners.
What about the carbon tax specifically? Polyev has, you know, campaigned on the tax. but there's still some uncertainty whether or not that applies to the industrial portion of the tax, and I know that we have the tier program that
Mm.
we've been putting it into R&D essentially, but it almost seems to be kind of a compromise solution in a way. It's, either if we didn't have that, then those dollars would flow out of Alberta. What would be an ideal solution as far as a carbon tax goes? Okay, it sounds like everybody's gonna get rid of the consumer tax, but what about the industrial portion, which is
You know,
much larger?
That's a great question, and I think our hope would be that that responsibility would be transitioned back to provinces to make those decisions. Before this federal Liberal government, Alberta did have the tier system in place or previous iterations of that system. There are, though, changes that I think could be made to that system. I mean, we want to remain competitive. Industry has been bringing forward a number of different ideas on things that we could change within that tier structure because, of course, it's up for review in 2026. So, this is a great time to start gathering their feedback and looking at what that system could look like. But again, that would depend on a federal government, essentially saying we're going to vacate that space and we're going to give that back to provinces to make those decisions. But competitiveness has to be part of that, right? Not putting unrealistic carbon taxes on our industry that drive investment out and hamper their ability to invest here. But, I think that certainly what I heard in Japan and what I heard from industry was great to have industry telling their own story about the great work that they've done. Um, because that is something that whether it is, Japan or the EU, that environmental record and the work done on emissions reduction and methane and things like that, the great work our industry has done even before governments came in, to set that up, especially in our natural gas industry. Companies have been doing such a great job of this, for years before the Alberta government ever asked them to.
Sure.
And so, that means a lot to our trading partners. And, I think it's important for them. But I do think that there are things that we could definitely change moving forward to make sure that we're maximizing competitiveness. And of course, we always want to do the right thing for the environment and make sure that we can continue to produce energy for generations to come.
Sure. Who's in favor of pollution?
Well, that's exactly it. We wanna make sure that, we maintain our high air quality, our high water quality, that we are using as little footprint as we can. And industry, obviously, with technology and innovation, has done that. And now our companies here, technology innovation that has been generated here in Alberta, we're now seeing them operating all over the world to help them meet their environmental goals, which is also
I was just gonna make the point because I've been covering this for a long time. US emissions have been going down for quite a lot of years, and it's basically all market driven. It's substituting natural gas for coal. It was nothing that Obama did. It was nothing that Biden did or anybody else. It was just actual market driven, and the companies, like you said, taking advantage of it. Um, Seems to me that there's a lot of intersection in the government in between energy, environment. I when I'm not talking with Ryan, I'm spending a lot of time with Minister Jean,
Yeah.
and the premier is actually very involved in this file as well. And she, like you said, she's very up on it. She's very sharp. She takes a lot of notes.
Absolutely.
So how does that work in the government in between the three of you in terms of
Mhm.
the intersection and maybe coordinating some of the power
Yeah.
play?
I honestly think that's one of the great strengths of Premier Smith is that she is very much a team player. And so, even when you look at what's been happening with all of the delegations going down to Washington and to DC and to the US over the last couple of months, she sees this as an all hands on deck opportunity. Same thing with Japan. It really means a lot to have a long, ongoing consistent relationship with your trading partners. And so, when I was in Japan, I would hear from companies, and I would just say also, we met with some economic agencies, companies, we met with the Clean Fuels Association, and it really meant a lot that Minister Jean had traveled to Japan, Minister Jones had traveled to Japan, Minister Scow, Minister Horner, that there is this ongoing commitment to building a long term relationship and that we're in this for the long term. And same thing in the United States. I mean, seeing so many of my colleagues taking our message down to policymakers and making those connections and bringing forward. I think Premier's doing such an exceptional job of bringing forward the facts on our trading relationship with the United States, the impacts that tariffs would have on American citizens, and those would not also be positive, right? That would likely increase costs for Americans as well.
Well, they're paying the tariff,
Well,
and you
exactly.
can't really get the oil from anywhere else
But
when you're in Ohio or Illinois or
you're exactly right, but still making the case to say, "Look, we should look at the Americans' concerns with what's happening at our border." And, I think her approach, to diplomacy, has been really effective, and so, I think that's a great strength, and certainly on this trip, it was one of the messages that when Energy for a Secure Future had first been working with Japan and setting up this mission, they had just released their environmental strategy over the next couple of decades. And so, environment was really important. Ensuring Indigenous communities' support and engagement was really important. And then, hearing from industry was also really important. So, again, having the head of the Clean Fuels Association, as well as the person who's running the LNG uh, project, the Rockies LNG project, as well as Indigenous leadership. It was really an effective mission from that perspective, but it was really based on the concerns that a number of Japanese groups had raised. So it was targeted, and that's where the intersection, I think, comes in.
excellent.
Hmm.
I know we're a little bit limited on time here, so I'm going to shift gears a little bit into maybe one of your more traditional roles, which is water
Hmm.
in southern Alberta. The government has undergone, I think, quite a dramatic rethink on water strategy and some long-term planning. What are some of your thoughts on that and where it's
Yeah. So if we go back, I would say go back a year and a half ago. I would probably say a year ago, November was when the phone really started to ring, and I was getting calls from the Minister of Agriculture as well as producers in Southern Alberta saying, we've had a couple dry years. We're about to have another one. What are we going to do? How are we going to get through this? If we get the drought that we're expecting, what's that going to look like? And so we were in a position where we didn't want to create panic, right? It was still early on. I mean, we still get a lot of precipitation in March and April. And so it was the balance of not wanting to panic, but wanting to be prepared. And so we pulled all of those water users together. We had the biggest water sharing agreements put in place in Alberta's history. I know some of the media had said, well, I think the Alberta government should just come tell everybody what to do, which is not the Alberta way. It is not what has worked in the past. What has worked in the past is bringing all of our water users together to say, how do we fix this? And so, coming out of that, and also coupled with my mandate letter from the premier, which was to look at maximizing the water availability that we have, not just in southern Alberta, but across Alberta, there are always ways that you can improve. We started that. Of course, you can imagine my department came to me with, a couple of specific things that they wanted to engage on. And I just said, I can already see that some of the things we had been asked for, um, especially I use the example of wastewater effluent regulations, and that's been raised by municipalities for the last couple of years. I heard it when I was in municipal affairs and then continued to hear it in environment. There are things we could do better to better serve Albertans and be probably more responsible with tax dollars, but look to other jurisdictions to say, okay, so how have they improved their water systems? And so, wastewater effluent reuse. One of the things that kept coming up, and it wasn't on the list. And I said to the department, you know what, let's broaden it a little bit. Before we come up with a list of things that we want to look at changing, let's go talk to Albertans, not just in southern Alberta, but all across Alberta in all of our major industries, whether that be power, whether that be agriculture, irrigation, energy, municipal users. Let's get their feedback on things that maybe they've had ideas that they've wanted certain regulations changed for the last number of years. Well, this is their opportunity to raise it to us. So it's a very detailed engagement process because we really wanted to go out, hear from them, and then take that feedback to come back with very specific things and then do another round of engagement to make sure we're getting it right. We do want to leave the first in time, first in right way of managing water in place. That's something that we heard a lot from ag and irrigation that we do need stability. especially, I mean, ag is a huge part of our economy here in Alberta.
Absolutely.
And so we don't want to create additional uncertainty, but we do want to say, look, there are probably things that we could do better, that we could help encourage water conservation, look at licenses that maybe aren't used. Is there red tape within my department? I know there is. I've heard about it already. Is there red tape that my department requires that makes us less effective at managing water? And so more to come on that, but it's honestly been such a great process. You know, I said to folks, I was at a town hall in Lethbridge in January, and I said, "Look, tell me what you do want to see, but also tell me what you don't want to see. It doesn't offend me. Like, we as policymakers, we need your feedback to make sure we're on the right path." And so it's been, I would say, a lot of good conversations over the last couple of months, but more work to come over the next few months as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I see Ryan looking over at his watch, and you can understand that you're pretty busy today.
We do have an event today right away, but thank you so much for the conversation and for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it very much.
It's my pleasure.
Domo.